Okay, so we continue 6th chapter, verse 6. Important verse. Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmanajitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Purport. The purpose of practicing Eightfold Yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga for show is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and its mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictation of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically. Okay, so a little bit of background here. So we know that we have gross body and we have subtle body. Gross body is made up of Panch Mahabhuta, Bhumi, Rapo, Nalo, Vayu, Kham. Then there is Manas, Buddhi, Mithya Ahankar, false ego, and soul. The soul moves from one gross body to another. It keeps changing the gross body. It doesn't change the subtle body. It is very important to understand. The same mind, intelligence, and false ego that was there in our previous life, or that is there in our current life, at the time of death, carries the soul to a new gross body. So while the gross body is completely new, with absolutely no connection whatsoever with the previous body or bodies, the subtle body is continuing along with the soul in its material journey. So this is very, very important. Mind, intelligence, and false ego travel along with the soul from one gross body to another. These are like, you can think of them like ministers of a king. Now, especially the mind, we'll talk about the mind specifically now. If somebody like Kamsa had ministers, who are all Rakshasas, who are all Asuras, then what will happen? He will attempt to kill Krishna. But if he has a good minister, like say Chanakya, for example, then he will try to do whatever is right for him. So this mind, if it is unconquered, it is like Kamsa's ministers. And it will become our greatest enemy because mind is produced from false ego in the mode of goodness. Okay, so one more little step backward. So when creation happens, the first thing that is created is false ego. Why? Because we have to forget that we are qualitatively one with Krishna. We have to forget that we are his servant. So unless this unless a very perfect platform is created for this forgetfulness, we will not want to be in this material world. We would not want to be separate from Krishna. We would want to go back and serve Krishna. So the first thing that has to be done when creation happens is to make us forget that we are servants of Krishna. So this is false ego. False ego. Ego means identity. False ego means false identity. So for us to come to this material world, first thing that is created is false identity, false ego. False ego in the mode of goodness. False ego is in the three modes: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. In the mode of goodness, mind is produced. So in one way, we can understand like mind is a loyal servant of false ego. A loyal servant of false ego. Which means that the mind wants to make sure that the false ego is satisfied. And what is the false ego going to be satisfied with? Thinking that I belong to this material world, thinking of deriving sense gratification through material things, dwelling over material topics. So mind perfectly, as a loyal servant, it does this. And all the time consistently is engaged in material things. That is its, in that way, constitutional nature, to be materially inclined, involved. But if it is materially involved, then it remains our greatest enemy, and it will make sure that we continue this life here in this material world. So when treatment is started, when we start our treatment, which is by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, mind rebels. Mind fights back. Mind doesn't want us to engage in chanting because then it will not be able to work loyally for false ego, because we will then start understanding real ego, and we will start disconnecting with this material world, etc., etc. So the mind doesn't want this because it becomes disservice to the false ego. So mind will come and disturb us sufficiently with all kinds of reasons and techniques and this and that and all that. That is the reason why when we are engaged in chanting Hare Krishna, mind distracts us, because mind doesn't want to come under the control. That is why Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that we have to beat the mind with chappal and broomstick, etc., etc. So the mind has to be conquered. Okay, and for conquering the mind, we are using the most powerful mantra in that sense. We are engaging in the service of the most powerful mantra, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which should very easily be able to control the mind. But we are not letting this happen because we are just letting the mind to go here and there. So the only thing that we have to do, or we have to try and do, is in chanting, we just try to engage the mind in hearing the nama. If we can do that, then the mind will automatically come under control. So this hearing business, somehow we have to engage the mind in the hearing business. Once we start hearing the nama, then our bondage is broken. But the important part is that we should try to conquer the mind. We can't just let the mind loose. Can't let it do whatever it wants. Then we have no hope. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. So this dictation of the Supreme Lord also comes to us as dictation of Acharyas, as dictation of Guru. And it starts with chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and then various other aspects. So to be able to control the mind, the other way to look at it is that we have to perfectly surrender to the instructions of Guru. Then also we will be able to control our mind. So yoga means Indriya Samyama, control of the Indriya senses, and the chief of the senses is the mind. So please don't ignore your mind. Please focus on bring the mind under control simply by engaging in Navavida Bhakti. For example, when we are hearing Bhagavad Gita, then our mind doesn't go here and there. So engage in activities of bhakti where the mind doesn't distract you, doesn't create trouble. Whatever works for you. Shravanam works, do Shravanam. Kirtanam works, do Kirtanam. More to bring the mind under control. Okay, but the mind has to be controlled, because otherwise it will remain our worst enemy and we will continue to rot in this material. Any questions about the infamous mind, which troubles everybody?
Yeah. True, mind is also the incarnation of Aniruddha, right? Aniruddha is incarnated as mind. What is the understanding there? Like it is the energy of Supreme Lord, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything is energy of Supreme Lord, but so in one sense that we can understand why mind is so strong, because it's representing Aniruddha. And wherever these connections are made, then we can also pray to that particular form of the Lord. So we can pray to Aniruddha to give us control over the mind. We can pray to Pradyumna to get control over intelligence, etc., etc. Right? Yeah, so link is there, Krishna is saying. So then we pray to the form of the Lord who's controlling mind. Mind is also said as moon, representative of moon. Yeah, so at Vishnu Tattva level, Aniruddha is in control.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it is the false ego in the mode of goodness which has taken the form of mind. Is
Which
there any,
generates mind.
yeah, is there any like something in mode of passion and ignorance also,
Yeah,
which
yeah. Intelligence is in the mode of passion. And I think it's the sense organs in the mode of ignorance. In Bhagavatam, it's there. I don't completely remember. I think it's mind, intelligence, and sense organs.
yeah,
Not wrong.
but intelligence is considered superior to mind, right? So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how,
Okay. So I'll talk about that. Yeah, I missed mentioning that. Okay, good question. So in the order, it is mind. Higher than mind is intelligence. Higher than intelligence is false ego. Higher than false ego is the soul. So ideally, the order should be that the soul dictates false ego, saying that, okay, this is not correct, you have to be real ego. Then the real ego tells intelligence saying that, okay, now go figure out how I am real ego. Then he gets knowledge. Based on knowledge, then he says, okay, mind, this is what it is. Now accept these things, reject these things. But unfortunately, that is the way it has to work. But we are in the material world. So everything is ultam pulta. So in the material world, reverse happens. The mind controls, or mind rather not even controls, mind ignores the intelligence. Even worse, if it had controlled, at least it would have been okay. It ignores intelligence. So while instead of intelligence trying to control mind, mind ignores intelligence. Mind directly skips one level, works for false ego directly. False ego, yeah, I mean, bewildered the soul so much that soul literally thinks that it is it's as good as false ego, as in just thinks that, yeah, I belong to this material world. So complete reverse, complete control is reversed. So that is why mind, even like Arjuna, that is why he's saying that we can control whirlwind, like we can't control the mind, because mind has actually gone out of control now. So it is overriding the whole creation, the hierarchy of the system. It is broken, it is overridden. So that is why bringing the mind under control is very, very difficult. But then Krishna says, yes, to practice suitable practice and renunciation, you can control the mind.
Okay. Yeah.
If mind is not controlled, mind will make us engage in all kinds of useless thoughts. I told this multiple times. Mind has 100 thoughts, not even one or two are relevant. This applies to all human beings. Only those who have, Krishna consciousness, who have made progress, they don't have useless thoughts. But mostly for conditioned souls, 100 thoughts, 2 thoughts are maybe useful or even applicable or relevant. Most of them will be speculating about the future. And most of the other, some will be worry, some will be anxiety, some will be, on the base of Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, basically, and useless. Really useful thoughts will be 1 or 2 in 100. So much of futility in the thought process of the mind. So one thing also we have to do with respect to the mind is ignore. Like treat mind like a child and ignore the child's demands. Ignore the mind's thoughts. Base the thoughts on Guru Sadhu Shastra. If the mind is thinking, feeling, willing, anything apart from that, just ignore it. So the more we disrespect or ignore the mind, the more it will come under control. The more we bother about the mind, the more troubling it will become. More trouble it will give. But the mind, when it comes in contact with spiritual things, when it comes in contact with the Lord, and when it gets attached to the Lord, the same stubbornness, steadfastness will help us to make progress in bhakti. So those who have stubborn mind, is good if they get attached to Krishna. The same stubbornness will help them to be stubbornly fixed on Krishna. Fickle mind is dangerous because fickle mind is not good on the material platform and it's also not good on the spiritual platform. So then the mind has to be trained. When Krishna consciousness can make any change, any kind of change, bring about any kind of change.
Yeah. So, Prabhu, when Lord says that greater than mind is intelligence, he actually speaks from the spiritual world understanding.
No, even from the material world, no. See, mind doesn't have any mind. Work is thinking, feeling, willing. Right? No, this thinking is just more than thinking. Thinking is also an aspect of mind for which intelligence has to come into play. Right? Because thinking happens on knowledge. Without knowledge, how can you think? But mind is simply engaged in willing. Like I like, I don't like. I like, I don't like. Feeling and willing, it rides. It doesn't bother too much about thinking. And intelligence has to come into play, gain knowledge, then process that knowledge, then say, okay, this is right, this is wrong. Mind has no patience to wait for all that. We'll just ignore and just go on the feeling, willing route most of the times.
Yeah.
So, but a well-controlled mind actually thinks well also. Intelligence is one of the aspects which will make one person think properly, also think nicely, which is required. Even to exist in material world, it is required to engage intelligence. And then mind will listen. Now, see, the other thing we should understand is if the intelligence is polluted, materially contaminated, mind will cooperate with the intelligence because intelligence is also working for it. Then the mind will work with intelligence. Intelligence will do all material plans. Mind is happy, accepts. But when intelligence gets engaged spiritually and mind is still material, that's when issue happens.
And when we say false ego is basically on the material platform, right?
Yeah.
But when it's the real ego, that's the state of existence. So that is the inherent property of soul, right? The real ego, like we exist.
Ego means exist.
Yeah.
Ego means existence. Real ego means that I am servant of Krishna. False ego means I am servant of Maya.
Yeah. So real ego is actually a attribute of soul, right? Like it's a natural position of soul.
Hmm.
But false ego is a material manifestation,
Correct.
which is there.
Perverted.
Perverted. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else on the interesting topic of mind? I think there are some more verses here, but okay. Continue then. Yes, Prabhu. Arnath Prabhu.
So from the mind, actually, by thinking or due to thoughts, actually desire comes.
It's the other way around.
Okay.
Okay, in the sense, it's a very integrated activity, but sometimes desire comes just by very simple impetus, like you see something. You not really thought about it or anything. See, okay, this desire is a very complex thing. Like, see, in our mind, there are various vasanas. Vasanas means like thoughts from our previous lives. Right, what we have liked to do, what we have done, what we liked, what we disliked, all that is there in the heart, in the mind, right? And those keep coming up. Now, where does the one way of looking at it is desire is also comes from free will. Okay, in the sense that we can use our free will and we can desire something. Okay, now, but mostly that is possible only for those who have slowly, at least a little woken up, jivas. Like some, if you have come to Krishna consciousness, then we understand that, okay, I have free will, I can independently desire, irrespective of what my conditioning is. But generally for materially in people who are not on Krishna conscious platform, the desires mostly arise from previous desires, or it will be based on previous desires or previous experiences, right? But first experiences human being would have had by misusing his intelligence, using or misusing his intelligence. So that is the root cause. But in the cycle of desires, normally desire comes from other desires or other experiences. But we should also understand that I have a ability or facility to desire something totally new, not connected to my previous desires. I'm saying that because many a times people think that they don't have freedom at all to desires. You say desire to go back to Krishna in this life. They know, bro, but I'm very conditioned. Said that is why we are saying desire.
And one more thing, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Like false ego in terms of like goodness is mind, passion, intelligence, and ignorance basically sense objects or
I
senses.
think so, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
But how actually like that's why like we are able to connect our like senses like intelligence, mind, like in terms of quality, right? Like tolerance, humility, or other things. Whether it connects to mind or intelligence, or like not like, or it's directly related to soul, or what is
Qualities. Interesting question. Okay, depends on what qualities we are talking about. So if you are talking about things like patience, patience is an attribute of the mind. Meaning because it comes from willing, right? Like whether I want to be patient or I don't want to be patient. So most of these will be, I think, mind will be possibly the repository of all these qualities. And if the intelligence is not in play, if the intelligence is not processing the right kind of information and feeding the right direction to the mind, then mind will be engaged in the wrong qualities. Then that is why I think this is the answer. The answer is mode of nature. Okay. Modes of nature is the answer. Based on the modes of nature that we are under the control of, mind will manifest those qualities. So if somebody is in the mode of goodness, mind will show compassion, for example. If mind is in the mode of passion, if a person is under the control of mode of passion, then mind will demonstrate lack of patience, lack of tolerance, all these kind of qualities. So what qualities the mind will manifest depends on the mode the person is in.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So we will maybe do one more verse.
Hare Krishna, like you said, mind carries the vasanas. So, is there anything which intelligence and false ego they carry something?
False ego carries its constant false identity. Intelligence might be carrying some pre-processed. I have not heard of it, or maybe I have not heard of whether intelligence is carrying anything, because intelligence. Yeah, actually intelligence will also carry. Actually, it should carry, because, so for example, let me explain this like this. Like Sachin Tendulkar at the age of 5 or 7 or whenever he started playing cricket, right? You knew exactly when the ball comes here, I have to hit a square cut, right? And that is an attribute of intelligence. That, when this scenario happens, do this is an attribute of intelligence. So which means that he should be carrying, because he would have done that so many times in his previous life, that the intelligence of, okay, when, where ball comes, how he has to hit was there in him. So he didn't have to go through too much training. It's just like with little training, it got wakened up, right? So I think it carries, but technique, I'm speculating. I'm not come across this anywhere in my reading, but it looks like it carries.
Correct, Prabhu. Function of intelligence is basically its memory. So that's why we can say
correct. Good point. Yeah, function of intelligence is memory. So he has remembrance of how he has to do what, which means that it's there in the intelligence. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And all these are even subtle body is a dead matter, right? So, so it is always active because it is always in touch with soul. Is it like gross becomes inactive?
Everything material is in consciousness because it's in touch with the Chaitana, with the soul.
Yeah. Like gross body becomes inactive once the soul leaves. So the subtle body, it never enters.
Subtle body
never encounters.
Yeah, it will encounter when you become liberated from this material world.
That's the okay.
Subtle body gets destroyed.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Should we continue? Okay. 6.7. Jitatmana prashantasya paramatma samayitah sitoshna sukha dukkeshu tatha manapamanayoh. So this should be our motivation. Should be our motivation to try and control the mind. What is the motivation? For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached. That is Brahma Bhuta. So if we are able to control our mind, then we have reached Brahma Bhuta stage, which means that we have come to the level, we have come to the same level as super soul. Meaning we have reached the spiritual platform. He's already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold. So no dualities, honor and dishonor, all are the same. So once we cross over these dualities, then we come to Brahma Bhuta stage. Aham Brahmasmi, that is the Aham Brahmasmi stage. Actually, every living entity is intended to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. Therefore, as soon as one's mind is controlled through one of the yoga systems, one should be considered to have already reached the destination. One has to abide by superior dictation, very important. When one's mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of Supreme. When one's mind is fixed on superior nature, and then he will follow the dictation of the Supreme. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. The effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of Paramatma or Super Soul. Because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is in Krishna consciousness, the devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of material existence, namely distress, happiness, cold, heat, etc. This state is practical samadhi or absorption in the Supreme. Okay, so some interesting statements here. Although we are intended to abide by the dictation of Supreme, but we are entangled in material activities because mind is not under control. The mind is under control, mind is healthy. Healthy mind means we hear dictation, we follow dictation of Supreme. Unhealthy mind, diseased mind means material activities. So when the mind is healthy, then it has reached its destination. Now, to reach the destination, to become healthy, one has to abide by superior dictation. Because mind is in a disease condition. When mind is in a disease condition, it requires intervention. So superior intervention is required. So that is superior dictation or instructions from authorities. If one follows superior dictation, then he will make progress. So the mind must admit to superior dictation and follow it. So when we follow this, when we follow superior dictation, we follow it, mind becomes controlled, then mind will hear the dictation of Paramatma. And this transcendental position, Prabhupada is saying, it at once achieved by one who is in Krishna consciousness. So this Krishna consciousness means not simply associated with Krishna consciousness, not simply trying to be Krishna conscious. Prabhupada is saying those one who is in Krishna consciousness. That means that he is fully in Krishna consciousness, not part-time. Such a person directly achieve this because Brahmabhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. So when one reaches that stage, only then they can become Krishna conscious. So if one is already Krishna conscious, that means that he's already reached the transcendental position. So devotee is not affected by duality. So if somebody has to be called devotee, what is the criteria? Brahmabhuta Prasannatma at least. Because only then mad bhaktim labhate param. Devotional service happens. Okay, so this mind control is very important because mind control means we overcome dualities, which means that we come to the Brahmabhuta stage, which means that we get pure bhakti. Okay, so this is our motive. And that is why it is said that the easiest way to control the mind is to engage the mind in calling out the Lord with all love and affection, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Then if we call the name of Krishna with love and affection, mind becomes controlled. So that is why Prabhupada is saying one who is in Krishna consciousness, for him mind is already, that position is reached without any external physical mechanical endeavor. Just by engaging in process of bhakti, mind becomes controlled. And one who consistently engages in bhakti, satatam, then automatically his mind becomes spiritualized. Mind becomes clean, then he comes to the transcendental position, he achieves pure devotional service, achieves liberation, then pure devotional service, and so on and so forth. Right? Like, please read Narada Muni's life. He simply engaged in hearing. Just by hearing, he achieved perfection. Just by very intense hearing. Intense hearing, all is, he very easily came to the liberated state. He understood, he says like, so I understood saying that his association with the body is futile. It's temporary and it's actually doesn't make sense. And very easily comes to liberation. Then he continues hearing process more attentively, and then he achieves pure love of Krishna. Just simply by hearing process. Simply by hearing process. That is why I said, Navavida Bhakti, any one of the methods can help us achieve perfection. And when we engage in those activities without us knowing, all this will happen. But then because if suppose, say for example, let me put it this way. If suppose say you say day one, you see day one, take a snapshot of a Krishna conscious person or devotee who just come into Krishna consciousness, take a snapshot of day one and take a snapshot of 50 years later, right? Without going into all the gory details of what happened in the 50 years. You can see that what Prabhupada is saying would have happened. You would have come to the transcendental position. Right? But when we see the nitty-gritty details day in, day out, we are seeing, then we're thinking, oh, maybe I'm making progress, maybe I'm not making progress. All this is because simply we are impatient. If we simply follow the process and then not, worry too much and then take a snapshot again after a few years, then we will see that actually, oh, changes happened. That actually, oh, I've reached the transcendental position just by consistently practicing Krishna consciousness. So we don't have to specially endeavor to do anything else. Only thing we have to endeavor is not to engage in adharma. Right? 4 regulative principles we should not break. Apart from that, we should try to just stick to the process, and the process will do. Process is not mechanical. So when we say call out Krishna's name with love and affection, that is not mechanical. So we cannot put a machine, dhun box, and achieve pure love of Krishna. Right? So there is a feeling behind, there's a feeling associated. So it's not like, so there is a process, but it has to be done with attachment, with feeling. Then the process works. That is the reason that involvement is required. That is why this whole process of hearing, etc., there is involvement. It's not a mechanical process. Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir, not true.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Like, since actually Anartha Nivritti is like very long time, okay, right? So let's say like after Anartha Nivritti, the stage of like conquering the mind, can we say like it is 80% we reached or something like that, or 70%?
Okay, so see, okay, so Anartha Nivritti, major part of Anartha Nivritti, yes, you can say maybe 70-80% of Anarthas are actually, yeah, Madhavya Kandamini says something, I can't remember exactly what percentage, but yeah, major percentage of the Anarthas are gone. Maybe 5 to 10% remains till Bhava. Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, Prema. After Anartha Nivritti, then there are 5 more stages. Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, Prema. 5 stages. So till Bhava, Anarthas remain. What are Anarthas? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, for the benefit of others. So these Anarthas, majority of the Anarthas are cleared in Anartha Nivritti when we come to Nishtha stage. But 5 to 10% will remain and it will keep reducing. There will be maybe one iota in Bhava which can also be misused, like what happened in Bharat Maharaj's life, and we can fall from there also. So Anarthas will continue till then. When Prema appears, then all Anartha is permanently destroyed, irrevocably destroyed. Like they can't reappear when prema happens. But till bhava, there is always risk. Even in bhava, there is risk. Yeah, so percentage wise, like I said, from anartha's perspective, maybe 85-90% is cleaned up.
So then it's directly proportional to conquering mind.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
And one more, since actually anartha is very long, right? So at present time, where we are actually, whether how to know gauge, like whether we are in 1% or 10% or still 1%. So
Yeah, I mean, how much of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya is there in an individual? Based on that, you can gauge. For example, when we came into Krishna consciousness, if all these things will be like whatever, X percentage, right? Or whatever, 100. Today, if you have come to 50, then we know that still 50 is left. See, and these, how much of all these remain, it is known only to that individual. Nobody else can say. Like, you cannot look at me and say, okay, I have so much, or I cannot look at you and say that you have so much. You can only talk about yourself. I can only talk about myself. So Prabhupada actually, see, the example given is like that of eating food. When we eat food, automatically our hunger is satisfied, right? So like that, when we do bhakti, automatically these anarthas have to get destroyed. How much extent, that one should know, like how should we know how many material thoughts, like, yeah, last time I said I will, actually everybody should do this exercise. I do this pretty much every day. You should do this exercise to see during the day what all material thoughts come into our mind. It will fall into buckets, categories. You don't have to go into each and every nitty-gritty detail, but generally, as topics that keep coming to our mind. It could be money, it could be future, it could be children, it could be home, it could be something else. There'll be categories of material thoughts that keep coming to our mind again and again, day in and day out, right? Now, first criteria is for you to know that, okay, the amount of thoughts. For example, if there are 50 thoughts today, maybe when we came into Krishna consciousness, it was 100 of these thoughts. Today, maybe it is 50 thoughts, and other 50 thoughts are about bhakti. Okay, that means that 50% we are clean. Okay, like that. So one has to understand or gauge how much material thoughts, how much spiritual thoughts. And then we will move from spiritual thoughts to thoughts about Krishna. So that's a higher level, right? Like simple chanting, X-ray machine is chanting. So when you chant, initially 100% material thoughts. Then slowly, steadily, one day it will be 100, one day 90. Then maybe we came to 90% material thoughts. Then some 10% spiritual thoughts. Like that, right? So eventually it should come to 100% spiritual thoughts. Then spiritual thoughts can also mean a lot of things, like you're worrying about where you have to go, what you have to do, what is book distribution, have this seva, that seva. All that is also spiritual thoughts. But subsequently, all that should also reduce, and the thought should be only about Krishna. Very natural, our natural, thoughts about Krishna should come in our mind. That is manmana bhava mad bhakto, right? But so you know that how much it is material, how much it is spiritual, which is, if it is spiritual thoughts, Vidwan Prabhu said that it is considered auspicious, right? Material thoughts is inauspicious, spiritual thoughts is auspicious, thoughts about Krishna is perfection. So we can simply evaluate our chanting and say how much progress we have made. Is it okay?
Should go. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on this?
Prabhuji, one Hare Krishna, one
Hare
question.
Yeah.
Related to this verse only. Gita talks about happiness, distress, fear, all these things. Is there any verse where it is mentioned about dream?
Yeah, not in Bhagavad Gita, but Bhagavatam speaks about dream. Dream is, there are 3 levels of consciousness. One is called wakeful, the other is dream, the other is called unconscious. So wakeful is when we are awake, when we are engaged in action, etc. Then there is dream, where it is subconscious. Subconscious as in we are not fully active. At the same time, we are not fully inactive. When dreams cease to exist and we are not in a wakeful state, then we go to what is called as unconscious state, which is called sushupti. Sushupti. So in this unconscious, we are literally unconscious, as in like coma type. The only difference being that when time comes for us to wake up, Paramatma wakes us up, and then we get up like nothing had happened. But actually, it's almost like as good as a dead state, because we have no connection with this gross or subtle body completely. So that's called unconscious. But dream exists, yeah, in the intermediate state of consciousness. Bhagavatam speaks about this.
In which canto or volume?
You go to vedabase.io, go to search and just say you can put dream, or you can put unconsciousness. Unconscious. You will get, there are a lot of verses. 11th canto has for sure. I mean, even before that, you'll get a lot of references. At least I know 3, 4 places where there's mention about dream.
Okay, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. If you don't find it, let me know. I can search for it. Okay. Fine. So we'll conclude for today on the most interesting topic of the mind. Okay. Panchakalpatarupyascha kripasindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Samaveta Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.